Welcome to today's webinar. So this is Optimize your AWS environment, reduce costs and elevate performance. This is the final part in the same AWS series. My name is Andrew Rigg. I'm a solution architect at Perfect Image, and my focus is around public cloud, so specifically AWS, Microsoft Azure, and 365. Please at any stage ask questions and we'll try to answer these as we go, but we'll also have a final Q&A at the end. Perfect Image is a managed service provider located in the northeast of the UK. We're a consultancy-led business with over 80 IT professionals with a focus on IT infrastructure, business intelligence, and managed services. So today we're teaming up for this webinar, and I've got David from Vertana here to demonstrate their Cloud Wisdom product. So Perfect Image has partnered with Vertana and utilized Cloud Wisdom within our managed service offering to help us identify and recommend ways to save and optimize our customers' cloud environments. This also allows us to better understand, the cloud usage, the costs, and helps with that optimization and right sizing piece. But it's by no way means limited to being, to a managed service provider product. So you can utilize, and have better control of your environment if this is what you wish to choose and do. David, if you just want to say hi and give us a little intro before we move on.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. My name is David Mcnerney. I'm the cloud solutions consultant here for Vertana. We're a global company based in the United States focused on optimizing infrastructure both on-prem and in the cloud with our new Vertana platform. I'm excited to be here today.
Cool. Awesome. All right, I'll move on to our agenda. So today I'm going to start with a demo of AWS's Migration Evaluator. So this was formerly TSO Logic. So this assesses your current infrastructure environment. But then I'll also then cover off why cost governance and policy should be developed. We'll discuss right sizing, what it is and why you should be assessing your existing kind of cloud workloads. Also, how to take advantage of cost modeling scenarios, and forecasting. I'll cover off what you should be doing and what tools and strategies post-migration to help reduce your cloud spend. We'll discuss the AWS native tools for cost management. Then David will do a demo and show you how to better understand your current cloud costs using Vertana's Cloud Wisdom product. The demo continues then into kind of a right sizing your workloads in AWS and how this helps with your cost optimization. And then finally, we'll do a Q&A for anything we haven't picked up along the way. So just before we get into the optimization piece, just a quick reminder, of one of the most compelling reasons, or why you've chosen public cloud to be your provider. Whilst the quote on screen is true, it's really the technology and the services layered upon this is what makes the public cloud offering so compelling. And this is the last slide I'll show for why public cloud. I shouldn't need to convince you. You're most likely here because you're already using AWS, but you're most likely trying to reduce your cloud spends. So I've covered the detail on this slide in previous webinars, so I'll just skim over this for now. But these are the top, these are my top 8 reasons for why people have migrated to AWS. Right now you should be seeing the advantages related to these kind of items on screen, but costs are always top of mind, and reducing these costs, with a focus, is a focus of today's session. Pay for what you use. Don't spend money on those idle resources. So I'm going to start with a quick 5-minute demo of AWS Migration Evaluator. So this was formerly called TSO Logic. It's just going through a kind of rebranding at the moment. So while this isn't a tool for optimizing your cloud spend, but optimization should start right from the beginning. So when you're assessing your workloads for migration to the cloud, this helps answer the questions on how much will it cost me to host my servers in AWS. For both that like-for-like comparison, but also the right-sized, based upon a lift and shift as well. So to get the data, that feeds into the Migration Evaluator, you deploy a small VM that ingests and feeds the data back to AWS services. The collection is agentless for virtual and physical servers. We can even ingest data from exports from other systems. The purpose of the product provides us with the detail to help understand the workload of each OS instance. By adding tags, for assets, environment, applications, software entitlements, this increases the detail that's and what's displayed and made available. The reporting is contextual, so you see that the data on the right will vary depending upon what node we click on the left. It's helpful when trying to understand the specific workloads and their potential costs. So, as we kind of go into the applications itself, it'll give you the understanding of that cost for running that environment on-prem. Now, zombies. Zombies is an interesting one, right? They're basically the servers that have been idle 100% of the time that the ingestion to the migrator was happening. So if we look at the overall environments, and kind of has, we've got our cost of the entire environment per year. That cost is made up of industry standards, or we can add your own costs associated to that as well. And then as we go down through each kind of different environment, it gives you the costs, whether it's in usage, whether you've got idle resources, or whether they are zombies within each of those environments. So this is the kind of cost, usage and cost element for what you then move into the cost modeler. So this is where we can now start doing scenarios based upon what you require. And again, we can do it over the applications. So we can look at the applications, the OS instances that are included for the application, how many SQL kind of cores you have associated to this as well. And we can model the current costs versus what it's going to be based upon our scenario. Now, we'll go back to environments. We'll do this in environments. It's probably one of the easiest ways of showing this quite quickly. So once this loads here, so we're going to have our cost for what it is to run basically all of our environments on-prem. Here it is in the bar chart for our current costs versus, I've got two pre-populated here, 3 years all up front and pay as you go for 8 hours. It gives us an idea of kind of what that's going to be for those environments based upon the metrics we've added here. So what you've got is in orange, you've got what is the direct match. So this is your like for like lift and shift versus right sized. So using the data and going, you know what, you don't need 4 cores, you need 2 cores and 4 gig frame. And again, for the second scenario, we've got the direct match and we've got the right sized. So it gives you an idea of how that affects the cost associated to it. So we'll just go into editing the 3-year scenario to show you kind of what that's made up of and kind of how we get to those numbers that are displayed on screen. So first of all, we've got our region. We pick the region that we want to deploy our resources in, costs associated to it. We then pick our term. Well, we've gone with 3 years all up front. Whether you need to include or exclude the zombies are key resources that you probably shouldn't look at migrating, but you can include them if you need to. And then your compute, so whether you want to consider AMD. And we move down to storage, so you've got your EBS, you've got your hard drives, you've got your SSDs, then you've got your CPU scaling. If you've run the report at a time where your workloads are less, you can add your buffer in. Then you've got your licenses. So here we've got 900,000 cores. The previous pricing was AWS to supply. Now we're going to bring your own licenses. We'll click save, and it's going to quickly adjust the scenario, and our new costs associated to that will be displayed. So now our 3-year all up front cost for our right size environment is now significantly less than what our current costs would be of kind of doing nothing. Now the 3-year all up front probably won't suit the entire environment, because you have, it would suit a production environment. So, where your workloads are required 24/7. So 600 grand versus 550 based upon what we have within the scenario here. And 8 hours pay as you go doesn't really suit production. It might for some scheduled instances, maybe more relevant for staging. So staging 630,000 versus 450,000 on a pay as you go. So scheduled resources. As you kind of move into DR, well, at the moment it's quite a large cost for on-prem. Those resources need to be there. Versus at the moment we're 165,000 on 8. But really, does your DR environment need to be up and running 8 hours per day? No. You'd hope not anyway. So what we'll do is we'll quickly just change this. We'll go 2 hours. We'll average it based upon 2 hours a day. Ideally, again, you'd be running less than that. So once we save on this, you'll see how those costs are now affected. And our cost will come right down versus the 700 for on-prem down to 77. So what we'll do next is we'll quickly add another scenario, right? So the three up front and the pay-as-you-go may not be suitable for all those workloads. We've got a lot of data here. We'll pick our region. But this time we're going to go with reserved, no upfront, 1 year. So we've got a commitment, but we can still pay monthly. We're still going to exclude our zombies. We're happy with our storage. We're going to increase our CPU requirement because our workloads were taken at a different time. The difference here is we're now going to have AWS providing the SQL licensing. You know, if your licensing can't be taken to the cloud, you haven't got software assurance and so forth, then we're going to take off our AMD again, and we'll click save on this guy here. So now these three scenarios, they're not all equal, they're totally different, but they will meet a certain workload requirement. So we'll go back just to all environments to kind of give that overview of it. And we've got all our scenarios now based upon 1 year no upfront with the SQL's licenses provided, 3 years all upfront, bring your own licensing, and else pay as you go. So you can see how quickly you can actually add a scenario based upon a particular workload. So just going to pause for a minute, just check if there's any questions just while we're here before I move on from here. Just the one. So who builds out the scenarios and do I get access? So yes, you absolutely get access. This is your data. You'll know your requirements better than us, but Perfect Image as an AWS partner will provide the guidance and help you along the way. And you can create as many scenarios as you want. Okay. So today's enterprises, are faced with a complex cloud environment. You may have hundreds or thousands of cloud resources, running across multiple cloud environments. They'll also span across different business units. Keeping an eye on your cloud costs can be tricky, time-consuming, and when you don't have the right tools available, it's very difficult. So managing cloud spend across the organization is becoming increasingly difficult. So IT executives, they need to understand the cloud spend across the organization to ensure best ROI. The finance teams, well, they need to improve cloud spend forecasting, very difficult at the moment, and drive accountability across the teams. And then, of course, your project teams, well, they need to deliver more services with the budget that they've been given. So even before we get to the optimization part of your current cloud resources, it's important the right policies and the right governance for controlling the cloud costs, are in place. You may not be here, you may not be sitting here listening to me right now if this was in place. The best approach is to develop this, when you're developing your cloud migration strategy. Part of any good optimization strategy is the ongoing monitoring of the environment, and constantly right-sizing and choosing the right savings tools and plans. With AWS, you have a multitude of ways to reduce the cloud spend, starting with simple things like scheduling, reserved instances and savings plans. So more on those particular things a little bit later. So up on screen are just some of the simple tips that you can do to help control your cloud costs. Extend visibility to stakeholders, make them cost aware, make them accountable, set clear budgets, set alerts, and be notified on any anomalies. Tag your resources, and enforce this by policy. And tags should include 3 types of information as a minimum. Billing information, so cost center, billing ID, or department. The ownership information, so who should be contacted when needed, or questions about particular resources. And then the purpose information, its environment, its what application or service is it, production or dev. Tags are critical, and as we get into the demonstration for Cloud Wisdom, you'll see how the tags are used to create reports and provide the detailed on cost breakdowns. So AWS has the ability for policies to allow the cloud spend to be kept and checked by firstly limiting what can be deployed. So before these policies are created, or proposed, you need to answer a few questions. Based upon these, the policies can be developed, and this can be in line with your governance and cloud teams to ensure that right balance is found. So who's responsible for your cloud budget? Are you going to allow the use of any service or resource? What's the policies around budget overrun? But then kind of critically, will there be a difference in policy for spend based upon internal use or a potential impact to a customer experience? So optimization doesn't have to take place after the fact. So optimization starts during the planning phase using tools like AWS Migration Evaluator. The cost difference between these three instance types can be huge. So VM1, right? So let's call it a M5 to XL. So it's got 8 CPU, 32 gig of RAM, and it's on pay-as-you-go. They'll cost you around £470 a month. VM2, so M5 extra large, so it's the next size down. 4 CPU, 16 gig of RAM. Again, pay-as-you-go. Well, now you drop down to about £240. But then VM3, so this is your M5 large, 2 CPU, 8 gig of RAM, and it's on a savings plan, and it costs you around, £112 per month. What right size, this is what right sizing your environment for each workload is so important. So it's all about what the actual workload is for that requirement. I'll just pause for a minute just so you can ask yourself the couple of questions on the screen. Okay, so and optimization, it's not a one-time effort. The cloud is a constantly changing place. There's new products, there's new application, and changes in workload requirements. Resource optimization. So, use the correct family and size. AWS releases new hardware and server generations regularly, and these often come with price reductions. So if you're utilizing older generation servers, then you're most likely going to be overpaying, and you're getting less performance compared to the latest generation. Simple cost optimization. So when to buy more or less reserved instances and utilize the savings plans. So the next couple of slides now, I'm going to talk about reserved instances and savings plans. So first with EC2, that was on-demand pricing. So this suited short-term, the spiky, the unpredictable workloads. It was great for dev test environments, but it provided the low cost and those flexible workloads. So then there was EC2 reserved instances. So these offered savings of up to 72% of the on-demand pricing, and gave you 1 and 3 year options for those steady state workloads. But so there was more of a need for more flexibility in this, right? So as AWS launches more and more managed services, so offerings that provide their own compute, that's where the requirement for the greater flexibility of those reserved instances come in. So this is kind of where and how and why the savings plans were introduced. So this provides both the savings through reserving the compute, but it also gives you the flexibility to change your instance family types, change the size, change the region, or even the compute. So moving from EC2 to Fargate, utilizing the Lambda function compute. So that's where the savings plans now continue to offer those savings. So AWS has the ability for policies to control that cloud spend, to keep in check by first limiting what can be deployed, and setting those general alerts for overspend. But before those policies are created or proposed, if you answer a few of these questions on screen, based upon these, the policies can be developed, in line with those teams. So I think we ran through a few of these on the last slide, so I'm going to skip over this one here. Now, the AWS native cost management, it does have the rightsizing recommendations built into their portal, and it provides the cost breakdown at a resource level. So if you're after a detailed breakdown, and the ability to report upon costs via departments, resources, and other tags, this is when you may need to utilize another third-party service, that collects the data and lets you analyze and manipulate this based upon scenarios. So kind of like you saw with the AWS Migration Evaluator, but more for cost management side. So this is where the products such as Vertana's Cloud Wisdom helps achieve this. So today, David's going to show us the Cloud Wisdom platform and shows us how we can use that product and how it integrates and provides the details that allows to understand your usage first, but then right size and optimize your AWS EC2. So over to you, David.
Thanks, Andrew. And yeah, I always like to start with just a little bit of background on Vertana. I mentioned this at the start. We're really a leader in hybrid cloud infrastructure optimization, working with 250 plus blue chip customers, just a snapshot of them down in the bottom left. But then some stats around where we've been able to really assist our customers by providing technology for mission critical workloads and then driving a hard ROI value prop. Like many organizations right now, we're actually in the midst of a business transformation ourselves, moving from kind of point solutions in the private and public cloud to a real hybrid cloud solution suite. And that's today I'm going to focus in on the optimization module from that suite. Go to the next slide, please. So Vertana, we'd like to be with our customers throughout their journey to the hybrid cloud. What we've found in the market is that while everybody seems to be rushing to the cloud, there's going to be some portion of infrastructure that is going to stay on-prem. So we have about 5 years of experience now optimizing for not only AWS, but also Azure and now GCP spend in the public cloud with our Cloud Wisdom solution that I'm showing today. That's also backed up by Virtual Wisdom, which is our real on-premise hybrid cloud performance monitoring capabilities. And then actually, as of yesterday, it's good timing with our webinar, we launched our next generation Vertana platform, which is going to bring together our legacy of on-prem and the public cloud into a single SaaS-based tool. The actual first module with that platform is our Vertana Migrate, which takes a similar approach to what we saw with TSO, kind of going a step deeper of know before you go, application aware, to be able to move to the cloud. But today's focus going to be on Cloud Wisdom. So this is where we're really focusing in on optimizing performance, capacity, and cost. What we found as we were building for the public cloud is our background in performance monitoring gave us a very unique insight into capacity and therefore cloud cost. And when we're going about looking at reducing spend in the cloud, there's really 4 areas that we like to target, which you can see here. First is bill analysis. I always like to say we can't start saving money until we know where it is. And that's where we'll take advantage of some of the data sources that Amazon provides, have some unique ways to filter, group them, really catch those unexpected changes in spend so we can quickly drill into them. From there, we find that typically most environments have some level of idle resources. These can be things like unattached EBS volumes where somebody forgot to check the box to delete it. And it's been reports that for some customers, it's a kind of a nice thing. For others, it's been a really eye-opening experience, especially for those who've been in the cloud for a while. We've found be able to find some of those idle resources, low-hanging fruit for quick cost savings. From there, once we've identified, what we can remove, what we want to keep, is where we dump into the right sizing. And this is where I think Cloud Wisdom really stands apart from other solutions in the space. You'll see our background in capacity, powering those right sizing recommendations to really tie performance to cost. We want to make sure that we're using what we need, but not more than what we need. And then lastly, Andy was talking about it earlier, but there's numerous options for long-term savings between reservations, savings plans, the like. We have some reports that look for kind of some daily ins and outs, especially for customers who are scaling in and out to help ensure that their reservation purchases line up with the usage. Any questions before I switch? Actually, sorry, I forgot I had one more slide. So for here, by looking at the bill in those 4 ways, we're typically able to drive substantial cloud savings. the main area that we're able to do that is by balancing performance with capacity and cost. We find even with organizations where we're using a tool to migrate, we're getting right-sized as we go, there's a slight bit of a disconnect between the folks who care about cost management and the folks who care about application uptime. If I'm building something for the cloud, I'm going to give it more memory, more CPU than it might actually need. So we really want to be able to balance that performance with capacity and cost. I can't go in to save $100 if it causes downtime and cost us $1,000. From there, really getting into the right sizing and then providing accurate purchasing recommendations. If we hop to the next slide, I think that's into the demo.
The next slide, so I'll hand over this screen to you. Just looking, there's no questions yet here, but I'll keep an eye on that as you kind of go for the demo at the end of that as well. So let me just flick this over to you, David.
Perfect. And Andy, is this the right screen? I know my webinar.
Yep, good.
Perfect. And I'll mention included in the downloads and then also the follow-up material, there'll be a link for how you can sign up for a Cloud Wisdom trial. I always like to highlight here, it's a very quick setup. Takes us about 10 minutes to get data flowing, get that initial right sizing recommendations. Once we're hooked into your AWS environment, you're going to see a series of reports very similar to those 4 pillars that we were just looking at. So our bill analysis section, this is where we're going to play with the Cost Explorer data that Amazon provides. So this is going to be the same data that shows up on your bill. And by default, we're going to come and break this out by service. So I can quickly come and see, like our Elastic Compute Cloud, we're up about $572 this month. And we're doing that by comparing the dark blue is this month, so 1st and 2nd of December, compared to the light blue is 1st and 2nd of November. I can see how we're doing on that month-over-month basis. From here, we want to give you the ability to really slice and dice this based on your environment. Andrew was talking earlier about the importance of tags. This is one of those areas where that tagging can pay off. I can come in and really slice and dice my environment in lots of different ways. Looking at the various attributes that Amazon provides, maybe I want to look day over day, week over week, or I can grab my specific tags. One of my personal favorites amongst our customer base is they have a name tag like this with everybody's email address and then a condition of alert me anytime somebody spends, I think it's $200 or more that I'm not expecting. So I can come in, start to show, let me know if any of my name tag has an increase of, say, 10% over last month. If I hit apply, this then quickly becomes an emailed cost alert and is exception based. So any days where we have that name tag with a 10% jump, I get notified of it. The second thing that we want to let you do here is really dive into and slice and dice the spend. Maybe we saw a jump in one of those name tags and I want to figure out what's going on. I always like to pick on this EC2 other category, and it's not just because it's the second largest spend in my demo environment, it's mainly because it's other. So I can do things like come into here, grab just that service that I want to dive into, and then I can start to break it out in different ways. In this case, we find usage type is an interesting one for other, and then I can come in and add a second dimension, maybe my owner tag in this case. Go app tag since it actually has some coverage here. And if I hit apply, I see that chunk of spend that was the second largest item on my bill is actually some data transfer. It's spread out across these tags, some EBS volume usage spread out across these tags, NAT gateway, snapshot down the line. So with this report, we can kind of quickly slice and dice, quickly figure out where jumps are and kind of where that unexpected spend is coming from. From here, if you remember back to the slides, the next step after we start analyzing the bill is looking for idle resources. So we have a series of reports here looking for unattached block storage, unattached load balancers, and then EBS on stop DC2. If there's anything in the environment, this will instantly get surfaced kind of right after you activate. So I can quickly see, in this case, we have this one unattached load balancer. and it's costing us, I want to say, about $20 a month. So not too bad, but it's something I at least want to be aware of. And if it's larger numbers, we see EBS volumes that can cost up to $1,000 a month. Want to make sure that that's not something that's idle. Nice thing with these reports is they're exception based. So if we get in and there's nothing idle, or we get in and we do that initial cleanup working alongside Andrew and the Perfect Image guys, after that it becomes an exception based report. I get emailed if there's an unattached volume that I need to go and delete, make sure it doesn't sit there costing us money. The next is our right-sizing reports, and there's a kind of a series here that I like to build upon. This is where you're really going to start to see us bringing in some capacity data from CloudWatch metrics and triangulating it against the cost and usage reports and the Cost Explorer metrics. So these three really build upon each other, starting with the capacity and then building up to the recommendations. Here I'm looking at our utilization box plot. And here I'm able to analyze my utilization of various AWS assets. In this case, I'm looking at my EC2 CPU utilization over the last hour. And I can go look over, say, the last 3 months can be useful figuring out, which are my EC2s that are running hot, which are the ones that maybe I can come in and right size. I'll show the mins, max, upper and lower quartiles, and the medians, give us an idea of, hey, this Mono 1 looks like it's actually doing pretty good. We're getting right around 60% utilization. This green fire guy down in the bottom left, I'm seeing a maximum of 22% utilization. Maybe this is one I can look to resize. The next step that we take is we want to take this same utilization data and start to graph it against cost. And this is one of our more unique reports. So here I'm looking on a per EC2 level, and I have that same CPU utilization metric is represented by this black dot. And from there, we're going to start to triangulate in not only if your instance is running on demand and the associated on-demand spend, but if it's picking up one of those reservations we've purchased, if it's picking up a savings plan, or if it's running spot. We can also see the associated data transfer fees, which typically shows up in that other category. So this lets us really see what's the true cost of my EC2s. And then from here, you have the ability to scope and filter in different ways. A popular tag here, looking again on the idle side, is show me my EC2s with, say, 5% or less CPU utilization over. I'm going to leave it for the latest day here, so I have some stuff to populate, but I can go up to the last 3 months here as well. These guys then become my targets for either shutdown or right sizing. Similar reports exist for RDS and S3. It's going to be different utilization metrics, but same idea of graphing utilization versus cost. And then for your EC2s, we're going to take it a step further and start to recommend a different type based on the workload that we're seeing. I think with the release of the 6Gs and the 4Gs, Amazon's up to something like 1.3 million, 1.4 million different instance types. So we want to provide this report where we analyze capacity and then make a recommendation of the best of those instance types for your workload. At the top line here, I can see, looking at this EMR master, over the last week, it was running on an M4 2 extra large. Based on that week of data, we're recommending moving it to an R6G, which would save us $160 a month, or about 50%. What we found pretty early on is this top line recommendation is only going to get us so far. If I take this to my application owner, if I take this to my DevOps engineer to go implement, I'll generally see pushback. There's going to be a reason that my application owner picked the M4, be it the memory, the CPU, the IOPS. It depends on the workload, depends on the engineer. But we want to be able to prove that this $150 in savings isn't going to cause a slowdown, isn't going to cause outage. It's going to be a safe recommendation. And we do that in 2 ways. The first is exposing the underlying changes. So I can see here quickly where we are versus where we could be. We're currently general purpose. We're recommending moving it to a memory optimized. We had 8 CPUs provisioned last week. We only got 16% utilization on those CPUs. So based on that, we can cut it in half. And I'm going to have better utilization, plenty of headspace. I don't have to worry about this running too hot. Memory is a little bit of an interesting one. This is where it's not provided through CloudWatch. We have to have the agent installed. So we pull in from the CloudWatch agent to be able to collect that data from Amazon. This instance doesn't have it installed, but we'll have some out-of-the-box capabilities to not reduce memory. So here we can see that, and then I can program around it. And I can also see that the IOPS is increasing pretty significantly, which is expected with the new family. From here, we don't ask you or our partners like Perfect Image to just trust this recommendation on faith. As Andrew mentioned earlier, you're going to know your infrastructure better than we are, and know your constraints, know your workloads inside and out in a way that we can't. So we want to give you the ability to get in under the hood and really tweak that risk tolerance so that it becomes a recommendation that is actionable every time. And from the way that we do that is similar to the other reports. I can come in and configure. First area I can look at is scoping. So again, another area where the tagging can be important. Maybe I want to look at just my dev servers or just my production servers, just this application. Different parts of our infrastructure are going to have different requirements, so we can scope it down here. From there, we start to set our CPU and memory constraints. I find probably 7-8 times out of 10, this is the most important and the area where we can potentially drive some savings. We have some, I think, relatively conservative out-of-the-box constraints, but we always see customers who maybe they want to be a little bit more risk adverse. So we target 95th percentile at 95%. We see customers who maybe I don't want to run that high. I want to come in and say, when I resize, I don't ever want my CPU to go above 60%, and I don't want my memory to go above 80%. Or my developer's saying I need a minimum of 20 gigabytes of memory. Let's just program that in, only find the instances with 20 gigabytes of memory or more. Outside of CPU and memory, we find that most of the times they're the most important metrics for right sizing, but when they're not, they're really not. If the portion of my infrastructure that I'm looking at is IOPS heavy, then I need to constrain based on the IOPS. So saying the peak cannot decrease, or again, I need a minimum of X amount. Or say I'm looking at the EC2s that run my network backbone. For those, I care about network performance. So again, I can set a minimum. Maybe I need 100 gigabytes per second, something along those lines. And want to be able to do that what-if analysis to provide the best instance recommendation based on your requirements. Also starting to look at things like tenancy, reservations, savings plan accommodations are coming in here shortly as well. And then the last constraints is the type constraints. Of those 1.3 million instances, maybe there's some that you don't want to use based on architectural standards, based on personal preference, whatever it is. But we want to give you that level of control. I'm going to pick on these R5As here for this example, but I can come in and include or exclude all the way down to the specific instance type. So if I search R5, I'll see all of my R5 recommendations. If I pull in the R5As, I can quickly exclude those. And now we'll make the next best recommendation. In this case, it's the R5, so a little bit more expensive, but running on the same chipset. Once it's set up, customized, you tweak your constraints for that first time. Similar to the rest of the product, this is something that you can then save and have configured and delivered on a week-over-week basis. So it can become that kind of targets for right sizing. We see organizations implement various change management processes around it. One of my personal favorites is we have an org that anytime this percentage savings is above 60%, they're going to make the change unless there's pushback. It kind of puts the onus on the application owners to come and say, no, no, no. But with that, we're able to help organizations drive to become more efficient. Last report here for you guys is our EC2 reservation recommendations. Andrew talked earlier about the importance of reservations for driving savings. And it's, I think, an area where there's lots of different options available. We look at really a scenario that a couple of customers ran into and we try to solve against, which is if I'm scaling in and out in the cloud. If I were to take a daily average of my instances when I'm scaling in and out, we can end up over purchasing reservations. So we try to take a more granular approach to recommend the number that we actually need. My demo environment isn't super interesting here, but I'll use this top line guy as an example. So looking at my M5 extra larges that are in EU West 1 running on Linux, I can see how many are concurrently running reserved, on demand, or spot at any given time. In this situation, we had 21 running on demand at max, and all 21 of them are running long enough to justify that reservation. I always like to use a metaphor to explain the reservations here. I live in an apartment building, so I have to park my car somewhere all day. I have two options. I can go and I can feed the meter. That's my on-demand spend. It's going to be a little bit more expensive, but if I'm not running it all the time, it makes sense. I do need to park all the time. It's something that is running 24/7. So I pay my building for a spot. That's my reservation. That's paid for at all times, whether or not I need it. So we're going to take that sort of idea and scale it across your infrastructure. How many of my M5 extra larges are running long enough to justify that reservation, or should I leave it as an on-demand spend? Similar to the rest of the product, you're going to have then the ability to come in, do that what if analysis. What if I don't purchase standard? What if I prefer convertible and 3-year? Maybe I need to bring my own license. Lots of different ways to filter, customize, and really make it so that it meets your all's use cases.
Okay, all right. So that's the end of your demo there, is it, David? I'll take back control. Okay, so I'll just check for some questions at this stage as well, just from your demo there. So there are a couple here. So question, I think these, yeah. So David, so how do you work when there's multiple AWS accounts?
Yeah, great question. One of the nice things with our product is it supports multiple billing orgs. So I can come in, plug in one AWS account, I can plug in 5, 6, 7. Pretty easy to kind of get that single pane of glass across organizations.
Cool. Let's check, there's another one here. So how long does it take to get the initial recommendations?
It takes about, I'll say, 15 to 20 minutes total. The onboarding wizard, I highlighted it here. This takes 10 minutes to go through. From there, we'd have about 5-10 minutes worth of initial calculations to get the out-of-the-box right-sizing recommendations. Typically, we recommend analyzing for more than a week or so before acting on it. We want to make sure it's not just a brief snapshot in time, but we can get some initial value pretty quickly.
Cool. All right, that was it for the questions. I'll crack on with this. I mean, we're pretty much now at a wrap up stage anyway. So if you do have any more questions, type them in now, just as I kind of continue on this one here. So this is the wrap up. And the key takeaways from the session, optimize. So don't stop at lift and shift, understand and control your cloud costs. Manage, monitor, and deliver expected outcomes. So ensure the cloud environment is secure, compliant, in line with your governance models, and to that point of the savings or your spend models within that governance model. Then repeat. So don't stop. The cloud is ever changing, and it's changing at a rapid pace. So modernize and to further optimize, but also provides greater benefits for users and customers. So Perfect Image is offering incentives, free consultations to support our customers optimize their AWS environments. On the slide handouts that will be sent out, I think it is available within the webinar here. There's a link for a free Vertana trial. If you want to know more, you can speak directly, or you can simply have access to that free 21-day trial. But also, they say we've got some Perfect Image free cloud optimization consultancies. But if your business is experiencing challenges or concerns with regards to your cloud spend, please get in touch. We're offering the free consultations for UK businesses at the moment. We'll have a chat about the issues you're facing, see what you want to achieve, and how we can help you fulfill your goals. Our job is to turn the business problems into a technical solution. So I hope today's webinar has given some insight into how how we can look to optimize your cloud environment, for both cost and performance. So this session will be available on demand, along with kind of parts 1 and 2 as well. Right, that's it from me. I will check for any more questions. David, do you want to wrap up with anything?
I think that's it for me as well. Excited
Cool.
to have this opportunity, and hope it sparks some interest and work together on optimizing some bills.
Absolutely. All right. Well, there's no more questions there, so I will hang on for another kind of 30 seconds to a minute. But otherwise, we're all done. Thanks for your time.